Hello fellas. Welcome back to Top 5 Choices. Today's video I am gonna do a detailed review and pick the top 5 best gaming phones 2021. After doing proper researches, we came to the conclusion that meets the best in terms of overall. Kindly leave a like if you find this helpful, and I'd appreciate if you subscribe to my channel and turn on post notifications if you haven't. We will be also providing affiliates linked to purchase from Amazon. Kindly use to for best offers and purchase from anywhere in the world. We'll be back with more videos. As with all gaming phones, the Nubia Red Magic 6 is a bit of a chunky chap. It measures 169.9 by 77.2 by 9.7 millimeters and weighs 220 grams, so it's going to be a stretch for you to use it one-handed. On the back, the Red Magic 6 has a pattern quite similar to its predecessor, with the Red Magic logo, a pattern decal and a fairly small camera bump that doesn't stick out far from the body. It's a glass back, and the phone has a metal frame. There are two LED strips on the rear, but they're quite small compared to those on other gaming phones. The Red Magic 6's ports are scattered all over the edges. There's a USB-C port on the bottom and a 3.5mm headphone jack at the top, a volume rocker and gaming mode slider on the left edge, and a power button and two haptic triggers on the right edge. These triggers are among the best we've used on a gaming phone, because they feel really natural to tap, and give a small shudder to let you know the touch was registered. They're also unintrusive, as there's nothing physical on the phone to let you know they're there, unlike the physical triggers some gaming phones have. The Nubia Red Magic 6 has a large 6.8-inch display, so there's plenty of screen real estate to see your game. The front camera is housed in the top bezel, so the screen isn't broken up by any intrusive lens placement. It's an AMOLED panel with a 2400 by 1080 resolution and around 387 pixels per inch. Images look pretty bold and bright, and the contrast is also great, which is important as it can help you easily distinguish different aspects of a game at a glance. The Black Shark 3 is a chunky phone, so avoid it if you're looking for something compact that you can easily carry around in a pocket. It measures 168.7 by 77.3 by 10.4 millimeters, so it's one of the thickest phones around, as well as tallest, if only by a couple of millimeters. At 222 grams it's one of the heaviest handsets too. Still, it doesn't compare to the even bigger Pro model, so this isn't the biggest phablet you can buy. Needless to say, a phone this big can be a little hard to carry about. It was a noticeable presence in trouser pockets, and when we put it in shallower shorts pockets it was constantly poking out the top, so this is a phone you may want to keep in your jacket or bag. The phone is also a little hard to hold one-handed, unless you've got big hands, with the power button out of easy reach for example. On the left edge of the phone is the volume rocker, on the right side, at the very top, and way out of reach without a fair bit of hand shuffling, is the power button, and at the very bottom is the toggle to enter Shark Space, which we'll look at in detail in the software section of this review. On the bottom is the USB-C port, and on the top is a 3.5mm headphone jack. There's an in-screen fingerprint scanner here too, and, unlike the power button, this feels like it should be pretty easy to reach for most people. We had an odd problem with the headphone jack. When we put the phone into pockets, top first, as we feel is the normal fashion, the port would frequently pick up bits of fluff and scraps of tissue, and on several occasions we had to use the SIM tray tool to dig this out. We've never had to do this with a phone before, and we guess it had something to do with the placement of the jack combined with the size of the phone, and perhaps the state of our trouser pockets. The edges of the phone aren't rounded, like on most phones, but are angular, meeting at a ridge that runs around the middle of the handset. It's not necessarily uncomfortable to hold, but a device with rounded edges might feel better in the hand to many people. As mentioned, the rear of the phone has the distinctive X shape, which is an evolution on the design we've seen on the back of previous Black Shark phones. OnePlus hasn't gone too crazy with the design of the OnePlus 9 Pro, which can be a good or a bad thing, depending on how you see it. I don't really mind it. The core shape and dimensions make this phone similar to the OnePlus 8 Pro, however the 9 Pro is slightly thicker at 8.7mm and a bit lighter, 197 grams. It has an aluminium frame, and Gorilla Glass on the curved front and back. It looks and feels premium, but I'd recommend the pine green or stellar black colors which have matte finishes, versus the mirror gloss finish of the Morning Mist trim that I have. The OnePlus 9 Pro is a tall smartphone but I quickly got used to the placement of the volume and power buttons. Tactile feedback is good and the alert slider works as expected. There's no headphone jack but the dual SIM tray, USB Type-C port, USB 3.1 Gen 1, and bottom firing speaker are in the same positions as they are on the 8 Pro. The OnePlus 9 Pro keeps the IP68 dust and water resistance rating of its predecessor but gets an upgraded 50 watts, up from 30 watts, wireless charging system. More on this later. OnePlus has switched to an LTPO OLED display for the OnePlus 9 Pro, which the company claims cuts power consumption by up to 50% compared to the previous model. It's a 6.7-inch display with a QHD Plus resolution, 120Hz refresh rate, and HDR10 Plus certification. The refresh rate is variable based on the app being used. The Asus ROG Phone 5 has a largely similar design as its predecessor, the ROG 3, a black rectangle, or white, if you get the ultimate version, with the buttons and ports in the same places. There are several improvements, of course. For instance, the back cover's RGB lit ROG icon is now filtered through blocks that make it look 8-bit, but most are less noticeable. There's a volume button rocker above a power button on the right side, with capacitive touch buttons on the extreme top and bottom edges of the right side that act as shoulder buttons. On the left side is the USB-C port that's been in the ROG series since its inception, but this time around, instead of another cable port there's a capacitive strip to connect to accessories. And since that's shallower than a port, it makes the rubber plug, to keep out dust and sand, easier to pop out. That's symbolic of the ROG 5's small but noticeable quality of life improvements. The 6.78-inch display is slightly larger than the ROG 3's thanks to smaller top and bottom bezels, more responsive shoulder buttons than in the ROG 3, and of course, the 3.5mm headphone jack. Don't expect improved materials, though. The back cover is still plastic, with a bit of a cheaper feel than glass that we'd hold against Asus if this wasn't a growing trend in flagship phones to cut costs. We see you, Samsung Galaxy S21. A bigger change is the back cover's design. Gone is the ROG 3's cutout window into the heatsink. There's still a ROG logo on the standard ROG 5, albeit with a blocky filter that makes it look retro 8-bit, that lights up in programmable patterns, much like gamer chic light-up components inside a PC desktop build. In the Pro and Ultimate versions, the logo is swapped for a small, about 1-inch OLED panel which can display a symbol or message of your choice. While RGB and OLED panels certainly scream gamer aesthetic, they're a far cry from the first ROG phone which had such deep grooves zigzagging across the back cover it looked like an incognito Decepticon. These flourishes were tamed over the ROG phone generations, and the minimal lines seen today are the culmination of a more mainstream look, with a geometric but rounded camera block at the top of the back cover. The screen is a 6.7-inch AMOLED display, and it's completely flat, so you're not getting curved edges at the left and right of the display, as on previous models. Some may miss from a design perspective, but we're not sure that many people will notice or mind, and doing away with curved edges on screens can mean fewer accidental presses. The back of the handset is clad in glass, something that gives the Plus model a slightly more premium feel than the standard S21, the back of which is clad in a glass/plastic hybrid that Samsung imaginatively calls Glastic. As on that phone, though, it's a matte finish, which gives the phone a sober, sophisticated look and feel. This is a phone that, despite its size and weight, still feels comfortable in the hand. Most users will find it easy enough to reach the on/off and volume buttons, although if you have smaller hands, or if you prefer smaller handsets in general, you'll be happier with the S21. On the bottom edge of the handset are the SIM card slot, USB-C port and speaker grill, and on the right side are the power button and volume controls. If you hold down the power button, the phone does not switch off. That feature is instead hidden in the drop-down menu, but instead launches Samsung's Bixby Smart Assistant. How important is the screen resolution on a smartphone? We raise the question because, somewhat controversially, Samsung has dropped the resolution of the S21 to Full HD+, down from the QHD+ resolution from last year's S20 Plus.